to order. We've got a little bit of a change in the venue. Clover Street is over visiting with the Historic Commission right now. So we're gonna take Town Farm Road next. And we have a motion to open this meeting.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
First of all, do we have anything from open forum staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So right now, the town has a 55-plus survey, so anybody that's 55-plus, we want to hear what your housing needs and what your housing desires are, so that way we can understand what we can try to incentivize some folks that are going to try to utilize our MBTA communities bylaw, try to incentivize some housing to meet the needs of folks that are 55-plus. So it's right on the town website. It'll be open through December 4th. So we would encourage anybody who's 55-plus to take that survey.
I did.
So the other interesting part of this whole thing is, I happen to be on that NICMAC committee, and Littleton kind of blew it up right out of the water.
I did.
They weren't happy with that at all, so hopefully our group can get a little better response, get really honed in on what we're looking for, get a big district, and get our town meeting to approve it, because it's gonna be, I think, a tough sell, or something like that. So, continuation of 35 and 39 Town Farm Road. Have a motion to reopen this?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Attorney Robbins.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. With me this evening is David Hedison of CHA and Choice, Don Rose, the project engineer, and Jonathan Lashley, sorry, Jonathan, the project architect. We've made lots of progress since the last meeting. We've met with engineering staff. We've gone through all of their comments. There's responses to all of the engineering comments in your packet. I know the board had raised some concerns at the last meeting. I think we've gone a long way to address them, so I'll run through each of those as they come up. What I'd like to start with is pedestrian amenities. So we had discussed at the last meeting that there really isn't accessibility right now from the site directly to the sidewalks that exist heading towards North Main Street. So what we've done is spoke with the fire department, and they're going to allow us to connect to their concrete walkway that right now runs in front of the Rogers Fire Station. The way we will do that is we will actually install a sidewalk along the front of our property, which will then connect to the concrete walkway in front of Rogers Fire Station. And then you can see that yellow line, that'll be a continuation, a new concrete walkway heading up towards the crosswalk, which will then connect to the existing sidewalks heading up towards Forge Village and then heading right towards St. Catherine's Church. This will be a full connectivity to the sidewalks. So we think this is a wonderful accommodation from the fire department. We will need the blessing at some point from the Board of Selectmen, as this land is actually held by the Board of Selectmen. But this will in no way impact the fire services and will increase the pedestrian amenities, not just for the people on this site, but from the people coming from St. Catherine's or Forge Village. It'll give them a nice walkway heading towards the millworks, which we don't have today. Any questions with that?
I had a question.
Yes.
So the sidewalks on both sides of North Main, or just the Phase 2 side?
This will connect in right across from the Normandy Day School. So where the yellow line there links up to the crosswalk, that crosswalk goes directly to a sidewalk that heads towards Forge Village. And then as you go across the apron there of the entrance to the fire station, the other sidewalk is there, which is in front, goes all the way down in front of, across the street from the Normandy Day School, and then goes all the way past up St. Catherine's, and then that goes all the way to Graniteville Woods. And you can also take a left at St. Catherine's and go down West Street to the Blanchard School.
Is there a designated crosswalk at the school?
There's a designated crosswalk at the school, yes.
Painted on the street?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, there's a crosswalk there, and there's another crosswalk at St. Catherine's Church.
Right.
And then there's another crosswalk heading in the other direction to St. Catherine's Church at both of those intersections, at West Street and across North Main Street.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's actually a great improvement, because right now, there's no connectivity there at all. It stops the Rogers Fire Station, so this will actually connect it down Town Farm Road, sorry.
So does there need to be an additional crosswalk there at the end of that yellow line?
There may need to be, once we get on site there in front of the apron, right on the roadside for the fire, there will probably need to be some markings that go to the, connect to the sidewalk. There won't be a raised sidewalk of any sort, but markings, yes.
Markings, yeah.
Yes,
That's gonna be a difficult turn.
yes,
But that is a definite,
yes.
okay.
And I know there's a letter in your packet from the fire department saying that they have no objections to this addition. And again, if this is a condition of the zoning board of appeals, then we'd have to go to the selectmen at some point and get their approval as well.
We presented that last night at the select board meeting.
Any other questions on sidewalk?
Nope, that was good.
Great.
Thank you, Melissa.
So the other thing, and I'll just hit this quickly, is on the waivers. Staff did go through all of our waivers. They actually went through all the zoning bylaws again. They had some suggestions on additions to our waivers. We agreed to every single one. No objections whatsoever. You know, this is a little bit of a weird site in that we're going to be separating an existing site that is one, so we need some setbacks as to parking areas, landscaping. So staff was really careful and complete to make sure that we had every waiver relief that we needed. So that's in the board's packet. We don't need to go through that this evening. Once you get to a draft decision, we can go through every single one, but we have no comments or concerns whatsoever to staff's additions to our waiver list. Unless the board wants to go more in depth than that, I would go to the next topic if there's any questions on it.
No,
Give it that then.
I think we're all set.
So I think the next question is as to parking, and I'll turn over to Don Rose on the parking.
Yep, so, one of your major concerns, and as I wrote about in the response letter, and we provided parking data from other choice, Don Rose, CHA. The parking data from other choice, developments. So we've got Helena Crocker, which is just, completed in the parking ratio, so it's 18 units, 18 spots, 12 spots, 12 residents with, vehicles, so a 0.66. And we give, like I said, Village at Mystery Springs, 36 residential units, 39 spots, 18 residents with vehicles, 0.5. Again, the Richardson, 16 units, 23 spots, 8 vehicles, 0.5. And the list goes on. The greatest is, goes from 0.6, 0.5, 0.58, 0.35 for the Chelmsford Arms, and Choice Center does have a 0.86. So this furthers the comment that we made before, 0.6 to 0.8 spaces utilized or needed for parking. And then Choice itself controls the parking on the site. So they know who's gonna have cars. If there's multiple cars per resident, they're gonna know all of this information, and they'll coordinate that. So it's not like this is a free-for-all on the parking. So there's no concern from management that they can, they can handle this situation, in that they feel very comfortable. There's not gonna be an issue with the number of parking spaces that we're proposing for the project.
And just to be clear as well, the number, that last one that's a Choice Center, which jumps up at the end, those are 1 and 2 bedroom units. The units we're proposing here are studio and 1 bedroom units, so that number is much higher. I agree with the board, though. When you look at parking generally in Westford, we want more, but the statistics are really here. They're in black and white. David manages all of these properties, so we know for sure that the numbers are actually this low. And as Don's pointed out, the best thing that we have ultimately is control. So if a resident comes in and says, I have my own car, but I also have these 2 other cars that I'm gonna bring with me and park there, the answer is no. You can only bring 1 vehicle. We don't accommodate other vehicles. Yeah, there'll be guests that come once in a while, but as to the other concerns that this board generally has is what happens at Christmas parties, what happens when family comes over. That's generally not the case here. Generally, the residents are picked up and go to parties at alternate locations just because of the size of these units. It doesn't generally accommodate it unless it's in one of the common areas. So that's generally not a case we have here. But given the numbers and given the number of spaces we have, we think this more than allows for enough parking on site. But we have more, and I'll turn back over to Don for that.
Right, and the second part of that is that we've worked with the fire department to allocate the 12 spaces as additional overflow for any use that we would need. There's gonna be specific requirements, no overnight parking or anything like that, and the fire department has indicated they may use them from time to time, but not very often. So for both the food pantry and the residents, this is an overflow parking, and it is 12 additional spaces. So you're getting closer to that number, that magic number that you were looking for, which is around 50 spaces. This gets us there.
Yeah, and just to point out that rear lot, most of that was used for the fire training facility when it was in use, which obviously has now been moved to Forge Village Road. I know this seems like a lot of parking spaces for this fire station, but also at the time this was designed and installed, there was a lower meeting room that was also used by the town at the time. So that's why they had the extra spaces there for the training facility and for the public use of that lower meeting room. The lower meeting room is used by the fire station for their own purposes now. There's no lower meeting room there, and obviously the fire training academy has gone to Forge Village Road. So these spaces are not needed by the fire department anymore. It's a perfect solution to the issue for overflow parking. And when we say overflow parking, we're gonna use this for overflow resident parking, but all of the staff of the food pantry will park here. So they won't park in any of the resident parking whatsoever, or any parking that's going to be used by the food pantry. So this is a great solution by the town on town-owned property.
And we had a really good conversation with the food pantry because we're gonna be the landlord, we're gonna be the owner. And, you know, they said they're gonna work with us. And when I drilled down, because what I learned from this last meeting with all of you, I said, you know, are you gonna be expanding? You know, I mean, and they said, yeah, we were still only talking about 6 to 8, and then 9 to 11. And it's those 2 days a week for those 2 hours, and when they're gonna have people at the site. And when you look at where the parking is at the site, the residents are coming in closer to the overflow parking. So they're gonna wanna all be parking down at the back of the parking lot. So I do anticipate, based upon the numbers we have, 35 apartments, we're gonna be utilizing about half or a little more than half, like 16 to 18, maybe max, like 20 spots. We're gonna have extra spots in the front that are gonna be open. And I'm pretty comfortable with those numbers, more than comfortable.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
just to be clear where that is, so if you're looking at the site plan, the front of the building here, which is building 1, that is where the food pantry will be located, and the spots that are around it are the furthest from the entrance to the building. If you go down, and Joe, if you go a little bit lower, right there, that's actually the main entrance to the housing units. So the spaces that the residents are going to be using are going to be closer to that entrance. So there will not be a conflict whatsoever between where the residents want to park, which is going to be closest to the door, and where the food pantry people are going to be parking, which is closer to Town Farm Road. Also with the hours, the food pantry was very comfortable with if we had to spread out hours, add additional hours in order to spread out the time for which traffic was coming in. If we did have any conflict, that's something we can work out when we get to the lease, or if we ever have parking issues. They also have a shuttle van that they use often. They said they could also use that amenity as well to shuttle people back and forth, whether it be staff or residents that want to go shopping. So there's plenty of solutions out here for the food pantry. We'll definitely be able to work out all the details. We see no issues whatsoever.
If you have traffic issues over there at some point down the road, I'm erasing my name from that decision.
I'll tell you the other good
You
news
heard
about
it here.
traffic.
This is gonna go down in history.
So I can't name it after you at post?
So the other thing is that the times that the food pantry is now open is 6 to 8 p.m. One night a week on Wednesday, and then 9 to 11 a.m. on Fridays, which I know we had discussed at the last meeting, the peak traffic times for Town Farm Road, which is at school times. This will be off that peak traffic time, so there'll be no conflict whatsoever with people that are going to school or to the people that are driving that bus, and the conflict that we have on Town Farm Road. So both of those conflicts are off the table.
Because there's two phases to the food pantry. There's the retail selling or giving the food.
Correct.
And then there's the people, the worker bees behind the scene who restock all the shelves.
Correct.
And that's two different times,
Right.
days, and everything else.
Right, and generally, they told us they may come, the staff may come a little bit earlier and do stocking. It's generally not like a additional day, but if it was an additional day, now with the parking at the Rogers Fire Station and the fact that we have those designated spaces out front along Town Farm Road, there will be absolutely no conflicts with the food pantry.
Okay. What else did you have, Melissa?
The
Okay.
last one was snow removal.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a concern on snow removal, and actually in the O and M, it did indicate that should we exceed the snow storage areas on the site, that it would be trucked off-site. That's a requirement of almost every single, we did it for Helena Crocker, we did it for, they can't have the snow, it can't be, within those areas. There's there's the area down here, there's some area up in here which is now impervious. And again, they'll be maintaining this, so there'll be some area down in here that they may be able to utilize, but the moment there's an issue, they need to have this clear. They need to provide clear access down to this parking anyway, because it's gonna be used by both the food pantry and the residents at some point. So it's gonna be a maintenance issue that they're gonna deal with and coordinate, so I don't think there's gonna be an issue for that.
We're used to taking snow off the site if needed. If the storage area is exceeded, we can't have dangerous situations. And we do that.
And then let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
On the one-bedroom units, do you get couples in the one-bedroom units?
Not so much.
Okay.
But you mean we do, like, I'll just say we have one couple moving in at Helena Crocker. No car.
Okay.
One couple out of 18 units.
Yeah, 1 out of 18. It's a couple, and we may have couples come, but when the couples, if we have couples come in, they're usually planning ahead that you're transitioning in the sense that maybe one may not be doing so well. So people don't usually come as couples, with 2 cars. I've never had that.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
I know.
Thank you.
No, but I didn't want to say, like, most of the time we have couples, if they're moving into our housing with 2, pensions or 2 Social Security, they have 1 car maybe, but they're usually getting a lot of help from family.
But there is a possibility in the market rate ones, you get 2 people working.
Well, not really. I mean, they could, but potentially they could.
Right.
They could. But we do see, those market rate units are going to be available for people with vouchers. So just to give you a quick discussion here, Helena Crocker, that building, has studios. And the studios are about the size of this area. After 1 year, the residents there could be given a voucher to move to a market rate unit. So it's going to be able to people to transfer from our other developments to Forge Village, to that area. So those market rate will allow people to move from our existing buildings, Village at Mystery Spring and Helena Crocker, and be able to get over to that part of town.
And just so the board understands the difference between the vouchers and the reduced rate, it's that if you go into a reduced rate unit, you're set at a certain price. You're gonna be paying $1,000, your unit costs $1,000, that's it, the $1,000 comes from you. If you have a voucher, it means that my voucher's worth $1,000, and I can go anywhere with it. So I could go to a rental apartment that's worth $2,000, still pay my $1,000 and give somebody the voucher for $1,000. So sometimes you see projects that have project-based vouchers, that's what it means. And then you see projects like this where it's income-based and the rent itself is reduced. It's just a little bit different.
And just to make it easier, so I'll just say 35 units over there. What happens is that waiting list for the affordable units is going to be, someone will call and we're going to say it's a 3 to 5 year wait. But we have these market rate units that you can put your name on, and those usually will turn over a little quicker, or they won't be applied for as much. And that way it gives people the opportunity to at least get out of a bad situation and move into our building, or transfer from Helena Crocker or Village at Mystery Spring. And we'll give them a voucher to leave that building to come over to this building. So it's it's not to capture a greater rent from someone. It's to give some of our existing tenants options to move to different parts of Westford.
I think, is there any other questions on that? I think the only other thing that was in your packet, other than the fire department letter, was Ray had already raised some of these concerns from the Board of Health about connection to the wastewater treatment facility. I did see that there was one public comment to Ray regarding the questions to the wastewater treatment facility. I will just state again for the record, we understand that we'll be connecting into a wastewater treatment facility that's owned by the town of Westford. This will be the second project that did it. We also did it on Farmers Way for Stony Brook 1 and 2, so I understand the process. We've already spoke with Steve Cronin. He was actually also part of the process at Stony Brook 1 and 2. We already have the documentation that we're going to use, so it's not going to be an issue at all. I think that was all the action items we had outstanding. If the board has any general questions, we'd be happy to answer them. We weren't going to go through the engineering memo blow by blow, but if the board has any questions related to the engineering comments whatsoever, we're happy to respond to them.
I think you answered most of them pretty well. The only thing that I would reiterate is when it comes time for the parking, I'm on parking tonight, as you can tell. When it comes time for the parking, there needs to be some good signage to say, okay, if you're a food pantry guy, you go here.
Yes.
If you're a resident, you go here.
Yep.
Not that they're gonna read the signs, but at least they'll be up.
Yes.
So just to tell you, because we're prepared for this, when we talked with Ken and Ted, we were even talking about, we're gonna have a new position, and that's gonna be flagger or parking lot attendant, because that's gonna be, we wanna make sure that that is avoided. And so Ken and I said I'd volunteer one of my residents, you know, to actually do that. But we were talking about that, and we were having a very animated conversation about, we're gonna make sure we stay on this. Because I'll tell you, I don't want phone calls at 7 o'clock at night from Mary, who's a resident, who can't find a parking spot. She'll be yelling at my maintenance guys, you know, during, you know, off hours, and we're paying them time and a half.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be an interest, it's in all of our interests that we have a good relationship. It's clear.
Because they get a lot of traffic in that 2-hour span, or 3 hours, whatever it is, for people going in there to get food. So, I mean, it's gonna be nonstop. So, all right, that's good. That's good. Anything else from you guys?
That's it.
Does the
Very much.
board have any other questions? Concerns? Comments? It's an easy group tonight.
I will, the only other addition I can say is we did meet with the Board of Selectmen last night and gave them an update, and they were also satisfied with the status.
Okay. I guess that's all
Open up to the
we
public,
have.
Mr. Chair.
Say that again?
Open up to the public, see if any.
Sure. Are
public-
there any public comments? Come up to the microphone, please, even though we know who you are.
Good evening. I'm Ellen Hardy, and I'm the chair of the 35 Town Farm Road Task Force. And on November 6th last week, the 35 Town Farm Road Task Force met, and we unanimously voted to speak at the Board of Appeals hearing this evening to express our enthusiastic support for the comprehensive permit application that is before you. We support this application because it entirely fulfills the town's intentions and priorities for the reuse and development of the town farm property. In April of 2019, the Select Board created our task force to come up with a use for the historic town farm, which was sitting empty. By August of 2019, we had unanimously set 3 goals: creating truly affordable senior housing on the site, preserve the historic integrity of the 1837 and 1904 buildings, and provide a new home for the Westford Food Pantry. Once the Select Board unanimously approved those 3 goals set by our task force, in late 2020, the town manager's office put out a request for proposals for someone who could achieve all 3 of the town's goals for this site. Choice responded to that RFP, and in January of 2021, the Select Board awarded the town farm project to David Hedison and Choice. The plan that you have in front of you meets every one of the criteria set forth by the town in our own RFP. There will be 35 senior housing units, truly affordable, 30 of them, 5 additional market rates. The Historical Society and the Historical Commission identified 3 tiers of historic elements on the property that need to be preserved, and this plan incorporates every one of those elements. and a new home for the food pantry in the original town farm is included in Choice's submittal. Choices received support at 2 town meetings when voters appropriated a total of $3 million in affordable housing and historical preservation money from community preservation funds. Town farm residences, as proposed to you tonight, is exactly what the town wants at 35 Town Farm Road. We hope you will find it possible to complete your review of this application and approve the special permit for Town Farm residents this evening, so Choice can move forward with its application for final state funding by December 31 of 2023. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're all set. I just
Okay,
think,
great. Thank you.
I think there's some language that needs to be drafted before we can do a whole lot of yes and a no-ing. Joe and staff will work on that.
Happy to do that.
So if there's no other questions, we'll continue this to the next meeting. At that time, we'll have the language. We'll go through the orders of conditions, and you should be all set.
Great. And that's December 20th.
December 20th.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, and that fits our time frame, so that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Can we have a motion to continue this till December 20th?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See
Thank
you
you
on the
very much.
20th.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
You did.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, next on the agenda is 8 La Salette Road. Application for Christopher Welch for a special permit for an ADU, 821 square feet. Can we have a motion to open this meeting?
So moved. Second.
Name and address, or name for the record.
Christopher Welch, 8 La Salette Road, Westford, Mass. So, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today for my application for my special permit for my ADU. Open it up to the board if you have any questions.
So I had a couple of questions. So on the existing house, I guess it might be to the right side where the garage is,
Yes.
there's on the plan, there's like a whole great big area of space. What is that gonna become?
That is still gonna be empty, completely empty land.
No, I'm talking within the building itself. So within the building itself, you know, it's a split, right? So it says remove existing overhead garage door.
Yes.
And there's this big rectangle
Oh, yes,
area.
Yes, yep. That will be created into a expanded family room for my children.
And you're gonna take out the driveway, the pavement?
Yes.
That goes up to there?
Yes.
Put it in the one?
Yep.
Okay. And, I'm sure you've read the comments from the Board of Health.
Yep. And we've actually reached out and we're starting the process with Civil Solutions for septic, for a new septic design for a 4-bedroom to meet the requirement that was given to us. So we're actually, they're actually coming out the 1st of December to actually start the survey and to create the design for us.
Mhm. Questions from the board? Comments from the board?
I was just trying to figure out the square footage, because some of it was gonna be now incorporated with the existing house and what was gonna be going with the ADU.
Yeah.
Because that 900 square feet is the limit.
Yes, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the new, so the ADU will be approximately 821 square feet of new living space. And then all the other space will, well, there won't be any new additional square footage within the house besides the demoed areas that will be converted from the existing garage into the family room.
So that'll be part of the original house?
Yes.
Stay with it, okay.
Yeah, there will be, and I apologize for misspeaking, there will be a small extension off of our kitchen that will be created, additional kitchen space. But that's, I believe, within the bylaws for any additional space that will be created.
You know how many square feet your house is now, the original house?
It's roughly between 17 and 1,800 square feet.
On 2 stories?
Yes, yes.
So Joe, here's a question for you. Does new garage space count towards an ADU?
So this has also been reviewed by the building commissioner who's here
That's
this
why
evening.
he's here.
But generally, no, it's just the living area. Would
Just
be-
living area?
There's no living area on top. But I'm saying it's just a garage, right? That's all.
The garage wouldn't be considered habitable space.
Yeah, no, because it looks like the expanded dining, which is off the kitchen, is above that garage. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So you still trying to maintain that split level style?
Yes.
Good luck to you. Now, you said you were gonna have Civil Solutions out there the beginning of December. Have they done any preliminary work? Because this is all on wells out there, and you have to be 100 feet away from all the wells,
Yep.
neighbors and everything. You still gonna have adequate space for your new leach area?
We should.
Okay.
My understanding, the well is in the front part of the property. And our, the septic and the leach field will be in the back, will be going towards the back corner.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Anybody in the audience to speak in favor or against? A lot of head shaking, no. Okay. All right, so, if the board has nothing further, so there's not really any demo here, is there?
It's just with the existing downstairs basement. There'll be a few walls that will be, or at the first level, there'll just be a few walls that will be knocked down and then created into the family room.
Okay, because typically if there was demo, we have a 30-day rule where you have to have all the demo debris removed within 30 days, but it doesn't appear that this is gonna be that situation. Any other conditions from the board? Straightforward.
Plans look pretty
Joe,
detailed.
you have anything?
Probably just satisfactorily meeting all the Board of Health's concerns.
That's correct, yep. Yep, that would have to be done.
So,
All right. If there's nothing further, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So with the conditions that Joe has mentioned with the Board of Health, can we have a motion for a special permit to create an ADU of 821 square feet at 8 Lassalette Road?
So move. Second.
Dan?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Jimmy?
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. So you're all set. They have 14 days to write a decision. There's a 21-day appeal period. And after that, you're home free.
These plans are all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
sure you clean them there, so.
We'll leave it there. Jim will be here tomorrow.
All right. So the next order of business is 66 Pleasant Street. Leah and Craig Kime for a variance for an after-the-fact pool installation. 12-foot 8 side yard setback where 15 feet is required. Is that you? Come up and give us your name.
Hi, I'm Craig Kime, 66 Pleasant Street.
Okay. And so you had the pool put in?
We did.
Before we start, can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we can start. It kind of looks like your pool guy doesn't know how to read a ruler.
I think that may be true. I think it's also, it was a relatively tight area there. The only thing we can figure out is that there is a marker there where it says 12.8. The pool is about 15 feet off that marker. It just turns out that because of the way the land moves, it is closer than 15 feet, according to when they did the survey. So my guess is the guy was there with the ruler, his tape, and said, that's 15 feet, we're good, and they put the walls up, and then when we had it surveyed to the actual line, it appears to be closer than.
And it is actually 12 feet 8.
So that's the part I cannot assess. That's from whoever came out to survey the land. Because I can only tell you how far it is to the marker, and it's 14 feet and 7 inches to the marker.
So did you hire a surveying company to come out?
We did.
And they created this plot plan?
They did.
So it is actually 12 feet 8 then?
That's what I
12
would
feet.
assume, yes.
Yes.
No? Yeah?
12 feet 8, yes.
Okay. Comments from the board?
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm trying to follow the timeline of activity here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you were granted your permit in 2020 to install the pool? Is that when you put the pool in?
Correct.
Why did you wait to 2023 for an as-built?
To be honest, we didn't realize that we needed an as-built.
Okay.
So we didn't realize that we needed to actually have someone come out and survey the land until we started a permit for our basement, which is like about a year ago. And they said, oh, you still have an open permit. And we didn't realize it. So ignorance on our part. Sorry about that.
Nope, no ignorance, thank you.
Anyone in the audience have any comment for or against?
I have a question.
Come up to the microphone, please, and give us your name.
Frank Ferreira, I'm the abutter, and that's my property line that we're talking about. The only question I have is, why is it coming up a year and a half later? Well, almost 2 years later.
Oh, so we didn't realize that we needed to have it surveyed. We thought that the permit was closed and everything was done. So it wasn't until we went through this process and found out we still had this open permit. I think it was August, or roughly August of this year, when we realized it, and then had them come out and survey it. We realized it was a problem, and then it's taken us a few months to get there.
Personally, I don't have a problem. I don't care about a foot and whatever it is. I was just curious as to why it came up so late and after the fact.
Yeah, we didn't realize that we needed to have it resurveyed and that we hadn't closed the permit.
Okay.
So that was all on our
Yeah, because when you were doing this, I came over and I said, here's the line, here's the property, this is your septic system, because I had originally owned that property and I knew where it was. It just kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, us too.
I don't have an issue with this.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's no comment. Anybody else from the audience? No? Okay. So can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we are looking for a variance from Appendix C for an after-the-fact pool, above-ground pool installation with a side yard setback of 12 feet 8 where 15 feet is required at 66 Pleasant Street. Were there any conditions that you needed? Anybody? Joe, you all set?
Already
Okay.
built, right?
Can we have that motion?
So moved.
Scott?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. So you're all set. They take 14 days to write a decision. There's a 21-day appeal period, but it's not gonna do much good because the pool's sitting there. So, anytime you open a permit, you gotta close a permit. Otherwise, that good-looking guy right there is gonna come looking for you. Okay. Too much paper tonight, too much paper. All right, next order of business is 4 Hilda Street. This is a continuation from our October meeting. Can we have a motion to reopen this?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Attorney Erickson, nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you as well, and the rest of the board. For the record, Attorney Kevin Erickson on behalf of the applicant here on the continued public hearing for the special permit relief requested at 4 Hildreth. You'll recall at the last hearing, you gave me some homework. Took that to heart, and we had our engineers prepare an analysis of pre-construction impervious versus post-construction impervious. We submitted a letter from Hancock Associates, RPE. You'll notice that the change in impervious was a de minimis 540 square feet within the lot lines. And then when you took into consideration the delta of the reduction from the totality of the project within the right-of-way as well, that gets further reduced to a net increase of 330 square feet. So what they found was that, again, that was a de minimis increase in stormwater, 0.01 to 0.02 cubic feet per second over existing conditions. The de minimis threshold in the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook is 1 cubic foot per second, so it's quite a bit below. And in fact, you'll notice in the Hancock letter, they did note it's such a small increase, in fact, that it's within their margin of error of their modeling program. So the other thing they took a look at was the impact, if any, on the drainage from the minor elevation change in the rear yard owing to the septic system, and they determined there would be no impact on the drainage as a result of that. And also, since the last hearing, we did obtain our driveway permit for the relocated driveway, so that's been reviewed now by DPW and building, and that's been issued. So if you have any questions, I am here for that. Otherwise, I think the materials are there, and I do have for Joe.
Okay,
One question on that letter. I'm a little befuddled by, what is a proposed thinner driveway?
Oh, in the Hancock letter?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not as wide.
Pardon
That's
me?
all, it's not as wide. That's all he meant by that.
Thinner, not as wide, okay.
Not as wide,
Okay.
yes.
Thin.
Has nothing to do with the coat of the driveway, it's the width.
Width, okay, all right.
Narrow probably would have
Narrow,
been
yeah,
better.
okay, narrow might have been clearer.
who else has a comment, question?
I do.
Go ahead, Dan.
So counsel, you may not know the answer to this, but, so your engineer, did he just do the 2-year storm event and stop at that? Because it's kind of unwritten generalization in local engineering companies, they do a 2, 5, 2, 10, and 25-year evaluation of these single lot sizes like this. Did he do that, or did he just do 2 and stop at that?
He's only opining to the 2 in here, and I think maybe probably because it's such a de minimis amount, again, within that margin of error, that he said, I normally wouldn't even report this because, but since you asked the question, we are. So, you know, I don't know exactly what he looked at, if that's the standard. I know Hancock Associates they're phenomenal engineers. So, but he was only opining as to the 2 years.
Who else has a question, concern?
I think they gave us everything that we asked for.
Joe, I have a question. How's the runoff evaluated or enforced by the town?
So if there was an issue in, the future, I mean, at this point, we have, materials from a design professional saying that there aren't going to be any issues. If there was an abutter that ended up having an issue, it would end up being, a civil matter between the private properties.
So between the two homeowners,
Correct.
the town is completely out of it.
I mean, at this point, we have information from a design professional that's stamped for your review, saying that there is not going to be an issue.
So that's what we have, that report by Hancock,
Mhm.
solicited by the applicant. I mean, is there a possible second opinion on something like this? I mean, not, Hancock notwithstanding, I'm sure it's a client that you significantly use for multiple sources. Not questioning what it is, but if there's some other issue, sans 40Bs, we always had peer reviews, and there was a kind of a generic general reviewer.
Could I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman? We're confident in our engineering report, but if the board wanted, this is a special permit, if the board wanted to condition if during construction there was an issue associated with drainage, that, there would be some type of teeth, for the board to have the town involved in correcting that issue, whatever that may be. That's an option, as opposed to, necessarily continuing and getting another opinion or, anything along those lines. It is, when you look at the net impervious, I mean, it is a really small number. So I imagine that any engineer is gonna look at it in the same regards. So, but we'd be comfortable with that type of condition because, if we're causing trouble outside of what our engineers have represented, we need to rectify it anyway.
So I'd like to go one step further and say, during the construction phase, yes, that sounds reasonable, but I'd like to go 4 seasons, go a year out as part of the condition. And that way you get spring, summer, fall, winter, different times a year, so on and so forth.
It'll allow for stabilization, which
Yep.
I think will help. I think that's reasonable.
There's been significant construction on the neighboring, abutting piece of property there over the past year or two. So that was a small ranch house that was there with much less impervious surface compared to what has been constructed on the abutting piece of property now. So, and some of the neighbors have had some concern that, I guess, and again, this might have been an unreasonably wet summer, but I think, I don't know if that concern has grown since the abutting property was built, but, I mean, what's there now versus what had, that small ranch house that had been there for the past 50 or 75 years, I think would have some kind of impact on a 100 by 100 foot lot with a significantly larger lot next door with large building, much more pavement. I think that might somehow be an impact on that neighboring property. Has to be, with that
I
size of
mean,
a
I think the water
construction-
table there is high too.
Yeah.
The perk is not great there. That's part of the, I think probably the historic issue out there. We are only looking at this lot because that's the only lot that we have purview over.
Understood.
But we mentioned before, the perk is difficult there because that's the only place we can put the septic is in the backyard, right? So
Yeah.
it's the only place, so. I don't have an issue, my client wouldn't have an issue with the 4 seasons.
And then the other thing is, odds are you may have to put a sump pump in. And if you do, I would like to discharge towards Hildreth Street. That would be another condition that I would consider. Just to keep the runoff away from the abutting neighbors. It's okay to go in the big White House's yard.
Put it in the garage.
I mean, I think that's the outlook we're looking for, is just
Yeah.
keep the neighbors happy from water.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the main concern, at least that's my main concern.
Neighbor's concern is the runoff, and, I mean, some of the documentation seems to be pretty significant.
Well, lived in town for a long time, we know the center of town and the water table.
Oh, yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's been that way forever.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to get up and speak for or against?
My name is Kelly Olson, and I'm at a butter on 5 Boston Road. And so, one thing, you mentioned sump. During the spring, when the water rises, right now, it does shoot out the back like just a stream. But if part of the permit would be that it would drain to the Hildreth instead of the back, I think that would be, good. But the other thing too is, and I only read just that little part of the letter, if you scroll back up, it says it's like a 2 to 3 foot delta when you put the sump pump in, or the septic tank. You said it raises it 2 to 3 feet? Yeah.
The back, yeah.
The proposed finished floor elevation, the proposed finished grade of the lawn is approximately 2 to 3 feet when compared to the existing grade. This is in part to provide proper coverage, blah, blah, blah. This change in grade does not, I have a hard time with that. I would like to know what the calculation is on that this change in grade does not increase stormwater runoff. The property, we're the property that had the river running through it when it was raised about 3 feet. So I can't believe that is a true statement. And I would just like to know what the analysis was to say that it wouldn't, that the issue is not the amount of water that will be draining off the roof or even coming off of the sump. It's the delta, it's the change in the elevation in that small little backyard. That water has to go somewhere.
If you look at the elevation of Hildreth Street versus the backyard, there's a pretty significant difference.
Between the backyard and the,
Yeah, Hildreth Street is significantly higher. I was pretty flabbergasted when I actually went there today, but I was looking at the plans, and yes, there's gonna be some, slope
There'll
in the
be a slope.
backyard, but, there are rules and regulations within the town and the state that the slope can only be so many degrees, and it can only be, all these other qualifications.
right.
So, do you have water in your yard now from the other house?
From the new house,
White house, yeah.
at this point, no, they addressed that with I don't know what they did, but they put some sort of drainage along that area, and we haven't seen that. But the other thing too is, even though Hildreth is higher, right now, the slope from the road back to our property is gonna be gentler than if you raise it, so now it's all 3 feet, and then there's a steeper slope down to our property. So obviously, the water's gonna have a better way to seep over a more gentle slope than if you have a steeper slope between the two properties. So I would still oppose until that part was addressed.
Okay. Someone else?
Hello, Justin Borick, 2 Hildreth Street, the other abutter. My big concern at this point, just to be candid, I kind of walked away from that first meeting feeling like I didn't have clear direction on the bylaws that aren't being met, what the real justification is. Looking at this, looking through the bylaws a bit and moving in this community because of, these values that the community created through the bylaws, through town meeting. There are a lot of restrictions on land size. There's a lot of restrictions on frontage and setback. None of those restrictions are being met. And there are several bylaws that state if there's demolition or changing in a structure, it now essentially becomes a new build. So I just really would like some kind of justification on why setbacks aren't being met, why there's a larger building being built than those setbacks would allow. Because a lot of these problems are because of this setback. And I think when it was discussed previously, it was Title V is really strict. Well, Title V doesn't say you can't put a septic system in your front yard. And actually, both houses on both sides have the septic system in the front yard. There's larger square footage in the front yard if the setbacks are followed than the rear of the yard. I just feel like nothing was really addressed that was brought up around the demolition and that requiring all the bylaws be met. If not, at least a justification, I think, would be a reasonable ask for why setbacks and standard bylaws, square footage requirements for lots aren't being met in this case. Because the historic home is being destroyed, it's not being restored, the footprint's not being kept. I mean, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a new build for all intent and purposes.
Well, part of the issue is that the lot is pre-existing non-conforming.
Correct.
So, in order to meet the current standards of today, you'd never be able to do anything with that piece of land.
Sure, but that's, I mean, I think there's a reason why there's a legal representative here, because I'm sure the purchaser knew that, right? This isn't a request to restore a home, this is a request to build on a non-buildable lot. And I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to build on lots, I'm just asking for justification on why a large home, larger than what would be allowed if setbacks were followed, should be allowed. If you look at the square footage of setbacks were followed and the footprint of the house that would be able to fit in those setbacks, it's substantially smaller than what's being proposed. So it's not that it's just a non-conforming lot that's being used, even though the house is being destroyed, so now it should follow all bylaws based on several different bylaws that state that. It's a large home for a lot that's creating kind of all of these issues, right? I'll look out my back window now, instead of seeing Hildreth Street, I'll see a really large home and a really small lot. I didn't purchase a house with a large home there, and I had bylaws that protected me. And look, you all have a tough job, and I appreciate all the work you do, but the whole community is asking for representation, right? They're in opposition. They're asking for some of these bylaws to be met, and I don't think there's even been justification given, right? All I'm asking for is at least a reason. Why can't the front setback be met, right? Why can't the size of the home fit within the setback requirements? Title V being strict is not a reason, especially if there's no engineer that stated that they can't build it in the front yard, which is a larger square footage.
Well, I think there is a reason. I'll let Attorney Erickson answer that.
Sure, so, to be clear, we're not seeking a variance, so we don't have to demonstrate a hardship. What we're seeking is a special permit for an alteration of a pre-existing nonconformity and a reconstruction of a nonconforming structure, which is only nonconforming as to front yard setback. It meets all other zoning requirements in the RA zoning district. There's no lot coverage in the RA zoning district, for example, so that the house meets the side yard and rear yard setbacks as well. And the standard for granting a special permit under 9.3.2 of the Westford zoning bylaw is that the proposal is not substantially more detrimental. And that word substantially more detrimental is very important. And there are 6 characteristics that are laid out in the bylaw to consider. We've gone through all of those. I went through all of those in the first hearing, and I've gone through of all of those in a supplemental submittal. So we certainly feel we have met the threshold underneath the zoning bylaw, but this bylaw is drafted for this reason, because these undersized lots now exist all throughout town. Non-conforming structures exist throughout town. This town didn't have zoning bylaws back in the 1930s when this was built. There were no front yard setback requirements. Title V was not Title V. To your point, Mr. Chairman, if you didn't have a front yard encroachment here, with the perk rates that we had in the front yard, you would not be able to build a marketable home, because even the existing structure will not meet the Title V setbacks for the new system. So, but again, we are conforming with the standards of the bylaw in our estimation, so.
It does state that it can't increase the non-conforming. And it does state that the frontage, including the extension of the property, would increase the non-conforming. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say it does not increase non-conforming when you have, I think it's, 15 feet of frontage that's non-conforming, and now you're gonna have 40 feet. It also states that the community impact is something that needs to be considered. When every abutter, when every single person who's in the neighborhood is in opposition, does that not have to be a criteria met? I mean, or at least a justification or some kind of addressing of the community's concerns?
I think we have addressed the runoff. We're very concerned with the water and whatnot. That's been the one thing. He also said the lot's hard to perk, so that tells him where he can and cannot put a septic system.
So was there tests for field capacity and perk throughout the entire property?
We perked that site multiple locations. And the only thing I do want to add, just for clarification, if we were building on the existing footprint, what the bylaw says is we can build on the existing footprint. We don't even have to be here. What requires us to be here is that we're increasing the area within the nonconformity.
I do believe, and again, I'm first time going through this process. I appreciate the feedback. But 1.4 applicant, any changes require special permit. 3.6 non-conforming structures, special permit if they restructure, extend, alter the existing property. Very straightforward. Demolition, 3.6.8. Any non-conforming structure that has any demolition, even if it's on purpose, requires special permit. You can't destroy an existing property and not, maybe you can, you guys know better than me, but would they not have to still go in front of this group if you're destroying a non-conforming? I'm pretty sure the demolition justifies it in itself.
Well, that's what we're seeking. So we're seeking the special permit for that purpose.
You did say you didn't have to be here.
If we were building up, my point, and maybe I'm sorry I wasn't clear, Mr. Chairman, but my point was if we were just reconstructing on the existing footprint, we wouldn't have to be here.
You would, because if you have demolition. I could be wrong, but.
Because they're not increasing the size of the footprint.
They wouldn't have to.
Okay, again, that's just trying to
No, that's
understand
perfectly
the,
fine. There's a lot to these zoning laws.
Yeah.
That's why there's special permits and variances and all different types of things. And they are here seeking exactly what they need to seek.
Sure. And there's something else, I know there's provisions, and this is the second home now on Hildreth Street that's been constructed. Someone who lives in the town center. I don't think there's enough pedestrian access, especially to some of the common ways. I would love to see just some community access incorporated in the project. Again, we have 2 homes now that have already been constructed. If there was some kind of sidewalk put in, there's a community path that's abutting 6 Hildreth Street. Again, I don't know if that's something that is part of these requests, but
That's a big undertaking because now you're gonna do land takings or get it in the right of way. Hildreth Street is narrow enough as it is. To try and cram a sidewalk in there would be very difficult. What's that, Jeff?
Historical road.
It is part of the
Yeah, scenic road, yeah.
scenic road.
Scenic road, yeah.
So that's another issue. It sounds good, don't get me wrong, but it's highly unlikely that you could get it all done.
I think the Boston Road project's gonna.
That may address some of those,
it's a
It'll
bike
address
path.
some of those.
There's no,
just the bike path?
there's no pedestrian.
Well, it's gonna be sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
Existing sidewalks moving, and then a bike, that's the plan I saw most recently, a bike path is added to the Hildreth,
Right.
side, and then the other side, the sidewalk just gets closer to the road.
But it's gonna go all the way to Four Corners.
Yeah. But, another topic. Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. Anybody else in the audience have any comment? What about my board? Anybody have any more comments, questions?
The only question I have is, what they could possibly do, because I'm sure there's gonna be gutters on the house. So to capture that water when it comes down the downspout via dry wells or some type of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Referring to?
it's outside of my pay grade, so I guess what maybe would be the best thing is, again, you're gonna have the condition proposed
Yeah.
that if there is an issue pertaining to water, then that we're gonna consider all options if there is an issue pertaining to water, and at that point, we'd have our engineers involved.
Yeah.
And there might be something like that that gets proposed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that would cover it.
Who's gonna do the checking for the year?
I
Or
think
are
it
we
should
gonna
be
rely on the
staff.
neighbors?
Are you comfortable with our engineering department doing that?
Sure. Yeah, I think staff, engineering will do it.
Yeah, as long as somebody does it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be as big of an issue as we think.
I hope it isn't.
You already said from Hilda Street to the back corner of that lot, it's a pretty big slope. If they,
deceiving.
if they build it up a couple feet and flatten it out, that, hopefully most of that groundwater is gonna sink in before it goes down that little slope on the property line. So, right, just by raising it up might even solve the problem.
It might.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a smaller slope for the rainwater to wash down onto your property. Right now, you have that whole yard sloped right down and draining into your property.
It's a steeper slope. It's a steeper
But
slope.
it's gonna be
If you raise it
smaller.
from-
He's talking from Hilda Street all the way to the back of the lot. It'll be less. She's talking about if you raise it, now she's gonna have a steep drop to her
I
yard.
see, yes. No, I was talking from Hilda Street back.
I mean, maybe suggest to your client that they put in some type of crushed stone or some drainage at the end of the back of the yard to catch it and divert it.
I think, again, we would certainly consider all options if it became an issue. I honestly think, our engineer does not believe this is gonna be an issue, at all. And I think part of the reason is the water kind of wants to flow that way anyway. So, and then when the lawn's established and there's, naturally gonna be some landscaping out there, that'll further attenuate the issue. And so, but certainly, if there are issues, we're willing to address them.
I think you get the point that that's.
I get the point, yeah, I get the point.
Just want to just understand, you had mentioned before that it would become a civil issue if the water, just trying to process
that
everything,
was-
just for clarity.
That was before
Yep,
the applicant has agreed to run 4 seasons and
Okay.
submit data to the town engineer
okay,
to be reviewed. And in the meantime, if you have a problem, you've got 2 choices. You can either go knock on the door and say, we have a problem, like a neighbor, or you can call staff and say, we have a problem, or you can do both.
okay. Just wanted,
But I just think that they probably will fix the problem if there's a problem.
yes. And I just want to also note, we would not want a civil, we're not that, we would never want that. We want to be neighbors who can love each other, have barbecues, and welcome into the community. We're not here for a fight, we want to see it work and everybody be happy in a community. But addressing these things now, which is what we're doing,
Yeah.
is a really good thing. So
No, it's all
things in
documented,
place.
it's being filmed, we have staff taking notes, I mean, you're covered.
Good, great, thank you.
Okay.
I guess, is the intent to sell the house to,
I don't know yet, honestly. I don't have an answer
I was
to
wondering
that.
how that would, if the new owner would understand that that was a condition.
Well, we'll have to disclose it,
Yeah.
because it's, first of all, the special permit's gonna go at the registry, so it'll be in title. So anyone
But
who
you'd be
buys it.
surprised how
I know,
sometimes that stuff
but
doesn't.
we will have to disclose the special
Yeah.
permit. We'll
Okay.
disclose it in the deed, we'll disclose the special permit reference in the deed, and we'll, disclose this special permit in any marketing
I guess when I was
materials.
just does it go to the owner then? That's what I'm, you know what I mean?
Special permit runs with the land,
Once it's the land, right, so once it's sold, then the builder's out of it, right?
but the owner is
The
obligated.
new owner takes on the responsibility of all the conditions.
Oh,
of
that's what I'm
approval.
saying, so the builder will keep responsibility for that time frame.
At least the first year, right?
The first, yeah, that's what I'm saying, after
Unless he
it's
sells it.
sold, right?
For as long as whoever owns the
what
property
it is, whoever
has the obligation. So, but the board would still have the same mechanism to go toward the new owner as it would the previous owner, because it's gonna run with the land, and that condition's gonna last for a year.
You just hope that whoever the attorney is for the new buyer does the
Sees it.
title search and sees it, and, because we ran into that issue up in Russell's Way. I didn't know there was a quarry up there.
Yeah.
No, there's not one, there's 5. Nobody told
Yeah,
me.
well, that would just be my only
that type of
concern,
thing.
yeah, that just, sometimes these, issues don't get noticed. And the new owner doesn't understand what the ramifications are with that, that's all.
That can sometimes happen. But comfort for the board, whether he or she notices it or not, they're obligated, so. That's why it's important to have good counsel.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope your client maybe is a little
Yeah.
proactive versus reactive.
Sure.
With everything that's been said multiple times, that he
I wholeheartedly agree, and the
gets with his
message is-
landscaper and whatnot and has a few,
Because when are you gonna be probably done with the construction thing?
Well, so we're still going through the demolition delay process with the Historic Commission, so that's a moving target. We'll see what time that wraps up, and then we're in the winter time, so I honestly don't know.
Could you comment on your interaction with the historical?
We had our first meeting was this evening, so they've scheduled a site visit.
So it's ongoing.
It's ongoing, correct.
So if, let's be positive, anticipate that you'll be in sync and compatible with what they are suggesting. Would that, if we approve this, could a condition be that you will come to an agreement with the Historical Society as to the outcome and appearance of this structure?
We have to go through the historic process, whether it's the permit or not. But I do want to say, I don't know if you're suggesting a condition that we work with historic on the aesthetic of the house. That's not their purview right now. They're looking at whether or not the house is of historic significance, and then if that is a finding, then there's a specific process that has to be followed before the house can be demolished. This doesn't have anything to do with the appearance of the new home. So we would be opposed to a condition having to do with the appearance of the new home.
Well, how about that it would be compatible with the district in which it's being built?
Respectfully, I just think that that's too subjective. I don't think, we have.
I mean, we touched on this a little bit last time you were here. One of the reasons I think Westford is as nice a town as it is because the neighbors have worked together, and new neighbors coming in have worked with the neighborhood to try to be, I don't want to say loving, but to come to an agreement, because you're asking for something that's pretty big. And so you're asking the town to give something. I won't say it's too much, but it's a lot. But it seems like it's fair that in return, the town should ask something from you.
So I think I know what you're saying, David, but here's the other scenario, because I was over there today and spent some time. When you drive down Hildreth Street from the center of town, the first house on the right is of historic nature. 2 Hildreth Street is. The next one on the right is not. You get Dr. Solnier's old house it is, then you get 2 brand new houses, then you get 2 brand new houses, you get Ebriel's house that's antique. So there's a big mix over there. It's not.
Well, I understand it. Nothing is clean and pristine, but I heard last week we had 5 or 6 people here from the immediate abutters to this property, and they had some suggestions, and they weren't being met with open arms, and think they were getting stiff-armed. That's just my impression, and maybe I'm wrong.
I think there was
they were getting stiff
comment
armed
here
as far
about
as the
the-
aesthetics.
Pardon me?
They were getting,
Just talking about to make it as compatible with the neighborhood, reasonably compatible with the neighborhood.
I agree.
And I would, and it's, what's done is done, but I would argue that the structure on 6 Hildreth sure as hell isn't compatible with the neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman, we submitted our architecturals with the board. The renderings are on file.
I'm just, this is subjective, for sure. But, and I think the leverage this board has and the town has is you're asking for a lot. And so I think there should be some equitable trade. That's all I'm saying.
And how do you,
Well,
how do you determine that? You
Well,
gotta
let's
say-
see how the outcome of the encounter with the historical group goes. Because this is gonna be continued, as I understand it. And let's see at the next meeting where we are.
Mr. Chairman, they're not looking at the aesthetic of the new home. That's
Right.
not their purview.
You said it 3 times. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, how does it fit in with the neighborhood? And one of the questions I would have as an abutter, and they have raised them, is the size of what you're doing here. And that's the elephant in the room.
What else?
Well, that was an issue that was raised last meeting about the size of the house and whether or not, significant concerns among the abutters was exactly what Dave had suggested, and there was some suggestion at the last meeting that perhaps there could have been some sort of conversation among some neighbors as to maybe amending the plan, downsizing the plan. And I think somebody wrote a letter, the Olsons from 5 Boston Road, saying they welcome the chance to discuss this proposal outside of and prior to the ZBA process. However, no attempt was made to contact us. This was brought up at that 17th meeting. Very difficult since the owner is a trust. We cannot be contacted directly. So I think there was some concern on the part of at least some of us, and maybe talking through this to see if there could be some amendments. And apparently that didn't get off the ground.
One thing about this area, though, a lot of the houses up there are on tiny lots, and they occupy the majority of the property. This particular house, my only concern with this design is that doghouse in the front. If they got rid of that, I think that house would fit right in with a lot of the structures that are in that neighborhood.
Is this 2,800 square feet? Was that what it was? 2,800. 2,800? That was the issue that came up initially, that the 2,800 square foot house on a 100 by 100 foot lot basically was the initial crux of the discussion. And then part of that came with the previous size versus the existing house, but apparently that Hancock has addressed that, or your client has addressed it through Hancock, so.
I guess, what is the intent of that area there? Is that jog that comes
I
out?
honestly don't know, but I'm guessing it's maybe a fireplace.
That's what the architecture will show, yeah.
I mean, like Dan said, though, all those lots are tight.
Well,
They average, like, I looked it up, all the houses right around it are average a half acre.
All big houses on it.
There's a couple 1 acres, there's .63, there's .5, .5, there's a .18, number 8 Hildreth.
So what's the pleasure of the board? You wanna,
I don't think it's fair that the neighbors have a say in how someone designs a building on their.
They're
on
not
their own
asking
lot.
for that, Jeff.
No, I
They're
understand
asking
that,
for
Dave, but it-
input. Let me explain something to you, okay? I've been on this board for 20 to 25 years, okay? And it has always been considered by this board, and it was never considered unreasonable. It was called being a good neighbor. And I know you're new to this board, but I'm just explaining where I'm coming from and why.
so what would your suggestion be, Dave?
I'd like to see, would like to see the applicant work with the historical people, see how that comes out, and I would like him to have a dialogue with the neighbors. And I don't, and that's, who knows where that'll go. But I would like to see at least the effort. Because I think they are asking personally for a lot. It's a very large house on a small lot. We already know there's potentially drainage issues. I will point out, I was on the board when we did, I don't know what is it Rome Drive? Where it was engineered, everything great, and it didn't work because of the dreaded water and runoff.
So would you like to continue this to give the applicant an opportunity to have a neighborhood meeting?
Is he open to it?
Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to upset anybody on this board. That is not my intent. When we looked at the size of this structure and the concerns of that, we were obviously focused on drainage, because that, to me, is certainly a consideration that's fair. And I think we're covering that with the condition that's going to be proposed here, and ensuring that there won't be any water issues. My client is very happy with the design proposal of the home. He's not looking to modify it. We're not of the mind to continue this hearing for that purpose. Again, I don't want this to come across wrong, but that's our position, because when you're doing that, you're really just delving into purely the subjective. I'm sitting here telling you that I actually really like the way that house looks. Other people may not agree, but that's too subjective for, number one, a condition. I think that would be an impossible condition to know if we could meet. And number two, it's not a situation where you're ever going to have a community forum and make changes to a plan or a design, especially if the owner of the property is telling this board that he likes this design. He thinks this design is appropriate. And so no, we're not, respectfully, we're not amenable to a continuation for that purpose.
Okay.
Can we condition it that he meets all the requirements of historic?
Well, I was just gonna ask Joe,
I don't know
what's
if there's
the,
any requirements.
what's the,
Or we're gonna tear the house down, 100%.
We have to, we have to go through the demolition process, though, with historic. It doesn't need to be a condition, because we've already started that process, and it has to go through its course. So there's no way.
Process. When you demo a house, and that historic has to put their imprimatur on it, but what else are they gonna have to say? The house is gonna be down, and then they're out. They have no say about what's gonna be reconstructed on that property.
No.
So they're not really a big player here.
They're
I mean,
not.
that house is in real bad shape. It has to go through historic by the bylaw process. It's 100% gonna be torn down. And that's the end of the Historic Commission. I don't think they have any role in this at all.
Well, I think
Other than
they can.
they have to go through, you have to go through them every hearing.
But they can also say the stone from the foundation has to be reused, or
Oh, I don't know.
whatever their purview is. That's what the historic does.
so Joe can enlighten us a little bit with the historic.
They may not, but they
As the
can.
applicant alluded to, they're gonna have to go through Historic Commission's process anyway. So whether or not you condition that they meet the Historic Commission's regulations, they're gonna have to do that anyway. In terms of the, design of the house, I would just caution the board to think about how you would tie that to the criteria of the special permit. And you should probably keep your decision focused on whether or not the applicant is meeting the criteria. Last time, it seemed like your concerns were primarily site distance and impervious areas / drainage. The applicants presented you some information pertaining to that. So I would just caution the board to stick to the criteria.
Okay.
I mean, I think you make a good point, Scott, about the criteria with the various types of constructions going on in that area. From the historic buildings there, to the new construction that's been there over the past several years, to the construction right next to this 4 Hilda Street property. It's all over the place. So, if we're talking about neighborhood character's already been destroyed.
Yeah, it has, I mean.
I mean, it's been flipped upside down over some period of time. Again, there was a 75-year-old ranch house that was there 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But that's changed significantly in the character of that piece of the neighborhood. That's happened all over Westford for a long time. So I don't know, we're in a bit of a quandary over it, but I don't know.
It's almost 50-50 new versus old up there.
That's
when you
exactly
start
right.
counting,
That's exactly right.
without even going down Dove Lane.
Right. And it's probably gonna continue. I mean, down Hilda Street further,
Yeah,
all the way down
yeah.
to
Up at
Flag
Mrs.
Road.
Elliott's
There's two-
property.
Yep, the houses there have been torn down, and 2 new houses are there already.
Yeah.
And that's been within the past year and a half.
Want to come up to the microphone, please?
I think it's fair just to separate the historic district from Hildreth Street. If you do look in the historic district itself, most of those homes are outside of it, right? This is in the historic district. There isn't a house around it other than the one that was just recently built that is less than 100 years old. I mean, you go a few houses further down, yes, but in the historic district, there's historic homes, and I completely agree with the comment on the firebox in the front. Like, I don't think there's even homes on Hildreth Street that didn't have at least chimneys. I don't think it's a high criteria if we're trying to improve the community, meet the values, that at least we're not putting a firebox in the front of a house and we put a proper fireplace when most of the houses surrounding it use fire for heat for the first 200 years, right, 150 years.
Thank you. Any other comment? Because I think if you look at the special permit criterion, you know, Attorney Erickson's answered most of the questions pretty well.
Did go through it.
We went through it all. Explained it. Drainage was a big issue. I think we've worked that out. I mean, Joe, does the Historic Commission ever, I mean, do they have the power to say, no, you can't tear it down?
No.
Not to my knowledge.
What they can do is delay the process and see if they can find someone who wants to restore it or remove it and restore it elsewhere. That's called the demolition delay. I think they can have up to 6 months if they find it's historically significant. That's their purview.
Okay.
Joe, did you happen to jot down what the language that we were looking for with the, as far as runoff and things like that? Sure.
So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong in what you're agreeing to, is that during the period of construction and for up to 1 year from the certificate of occupancy, the applicant would work with the engineering office to address any drainage issues that may appear during, during construction and the post 1 year from certificate of occupancy.
And those drainage issues would be obviously abutters.
Well, yeah, it would cause any issues to abutters, I guess, or the house itself that was constructed if it happened to impact the home.
Mhm.
But it would work with the engineering office to address those concerns.
Joe, that's a year from the first shovel in the ground?
No, from
No, no.
A year from
Certificate
occupancy.
of
So
occupancy.
during construction
built.
and then a year post
It's built,
certificate.
after construction?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, when he gets the occupancy permit.
Occupancy, okay, after the occupancy permit, okay.
Now, does engineering do any benchmark, like now? what the existing conditions look like in the neighboring yards and whatnot?
I mean, we have the materials from the applicant, and show what the existing conditions are, what the proposed conditions will be. And there'll be, have to be an as-built, in order to get the certificate of occupancy.
Could we request the engineers from Hancock to share that information with our engineering department for like post-development? Just so they can start a file on it? Do you know if they'd be willing to share that?
When you're asking, you mean like the design?
Design
Development design?
yeah.
Yeah, we can get that, yeah.
So they have something as a baseline?
Yeah, benchmark.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess would engineering take a look at the site when it's completed, Henry? Or is that just, you would be doing that?
What we normally do, we get is an as-built plot plan at the end, and the engineering and everything would be on that. So they would check it, they'd stamp it and sign it.
Because the engineering doesn't usually get involved until you have an acre. Because then you have stormwater management that comes into play. So if this was a 1.5 acre site per se, then they would be involved in a much heavier capacity. As long as they wouldn't mind sharing, so they have a benchmark or a baseline for
Yeah, in case there is an
pre-development.
issue down the road, right? Now,
Yeah.
then they have some type of baseline or whatever to work with.
Any other questions? Joe, are you all set?
But if you are, Mr. Chair, we need a vote, depending on how the board feels, if you want to close the hearing.
We want to close this hearing?
I think it's talked out enough to close it.
Okay. Before we close the public hearing, we have our usual 30-day cart the trash out for demolition as a condition. And the other ones that we've mentioned. All right, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 4 Hilda Street, we are looking for a special permit to allow for the reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling with a larger volume area, and any other permit relief, including variance relief as may be required by the Westford zoning bylaws.
With all conditions discussed this evening.
Correct. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Scott?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. So you're all set. I don't have to
Thank
tell
you,
you
Mr.
what the
Process is.
process is.
Sir. Thank
And
you.
maybe as a good faith gesture, your client might tear that chimney off the front of the house.
Mention it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right.
He owes us, tell him to do it.
Okay. So, does anybody have any correspondence or updates? Thank you, Henry.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you, Henry.
No, Mr. Chair, nothing for you.
Okay. Guess I had nothing either. Mac is meeting again tomorrow night. We're getting closer on language, picking out locations within the town. A lot of it's along 110. And some of the bigger sites. As I said earlier, it's just a question of getting it all the ducks in a row and then presenting it to town meeting, and hopefully it goes better than Littleton's town
Why
meeting.
Littleton? What was the problem?
Well, so I think 2 things, Dave. The first thing was, people who went to vote, I don't think they are aware of the consequence. And the consequence is, the state has said, if you don't have a plan in order,
Yeah.
we're gonna start hitting the funds.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing is that, and I've experienced it around town here, the lack of education for the voters.
Oh, it's the impact.
Well, that, and they were coming up with crazy stuff. I mean, I had someone call me the other day and say, now, aren't they spot zoning this in Westford? And I said, well, first of all, you can't spot zone, that's illegal. And I said, no. I said, we're creating big zones of areas based on, you know, location to the trend, all the amenities and shopping and areas that, you know, you might see, you may not see. You know, we've worked very hard to, let's say, go down 110 and take my building and put up 4 stories when the real estate building is only a single story. You know, because that's going to be a traffic problem. All of a sudden, you ride along and here's this great big building sticking up out of nowhere. So I mean, it's considerations like that that we've looked at, and you know, some of these things are going to maybe happen soon. Other ones are going to be an ongoing process, like Tech Park East, Gutierrez's building down there, where you know the Emerson Medical Building is. He's got some long-term leases, he's got a lot of things he's got to do down there, so that's gonna be a place where you're not gonna get immediate results of housing because he's gonna tear something down, build something back up, and so that's gonna be an ongoing thing, as will maybe some of the other spots that they've picked.
I think part of Littleton's issue is the location. I think a lot of abutters, neighbors in that section, wherever it was like
Down by the train station.
Yeah, but there's like 230 people or something at the meeting total.
Yeah.
So they flooded the meeting, the neighbors flooded the meeting
Yeah.
because they didn't want it there. And basically, that's how you can work a town meeting, as you know. If you get enough turnout to overrule the suggestion. And it seemed like they rushed it too.
Yeah,
The town meeting's already been held there, this is early November. But they have to have a do-over, because that location was really opposed by a significant number of neighbors.
And it's
It all showed up and voted against it.
It's Foster Street with all those empty buildings. They've been
Yeah.
empty for the last 20 years for
Yeah.
crying out loud. I mean,
Yeah.
what a good spot to play. And the train station's there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I think you're right, they did rush it. I mean, Joe will tell you how much time we put into this and how much time staff has put into
They
this.
put into it, yeah.
Oh my
Oh my
God,
gosh.
and we're getting there, but we're not anywhere as close to go to town meeting. I mean, we got a long way to go yet.
Yeah, we still feel like we're behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways.
It's an onerous piece of legislation too.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. Certain period, how many towns are involved at putting up 300,000 units for a number of towns involved?
Yep.
It's a burden on a lot of towns. I just look at Ashby. You ever go to Ashby?
Yeah.
You have to fly a helicopter from here to get to Ashby. They have to put up 62 units in Ashby. How the hell do you get out of Ashby other than driving your car?
Yeah.
I mean, why is Ashby?
they
Why is
abut
Ashby?
They must have, they abut Fitchburg.
They abut
Yeah.
Fitchburg.
What is
But
it,
to
10
get from
miles
Ashby
within
to
the train
Fitchburg?
station, or 15 miles? Isn't that,
It's if your community is adjacent to
Adjacent.
someone who has a transit
just a
stop.
town adjacent to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bus
I mean,
route or train station.
It's a stretch, the legislation, I think, is a stretch to begin with, but I think some towns are gonna have to struggle with it. Is Holden still pursuing that suit?
They're still holding out.
I thought they had a suit filed.
There is, so that one is a little wonky. So it's not the town necessarily going against the state. It's folks trying to petition to get their either select board or city council, whatever it is over there, to take action because they never submitted an action plan. So we had to submit an action plan by the end of January this last year.
Yes.
Which they never did. So there's a group of people that are looking to sue Holden to get them to start complying with the bylaw, which they just haven't done.
Oh, okay, okay, so that's a
So
different
it's not
scenario.
necessarily like the town going after the state or anything.
And see, at least
Okay.
out here, septic was gonna be the driving factor.
Of course, yeah.
In towns like Lexington and Arlington and Cambridge and all those areas, they're city sewer. I mean, they're talking craziness. I mean, they're gonna take a half-acre lot and put 6 units on it 40 feet high.
Yeah, yeah,
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
it's,
So
It's a
at least
bit
we-
different in Westford, for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, because we're gonna have some control. You know, town water's another thing you gotta have, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But we're getting there with staff's help. We have, you know, as I said, we have a consultant too they're very good. They've done a in-depth study of the town and everything and different areas that we suggested to them. And now we're just trying to hone the list down as to the areas that we really want in there. And I think, you know, we want to have more than less just in case, you know, some of these get bumped at town meeting, you know, we're gonna have choice A, choice B, and choice C.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting.
It's a lot on town staff too.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Just wish we could even dedicate even more time to it, but we had some other bylaws that we had to work on as well.
All right, if nobody has anything else, we have a motion to adjourn
Move
this
to
meeting.
adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.